The collision of two titans rarely ends in peace. Yet the most profound encounter in the ancient world, the meeting between the ruler of Israel and the Queen of Sheba, did not result in war or conquest. Instead, it resulted in something far more dangerous: the exchange of ideologies that permanently reshaped geopolitical fate, spiritual understanding, and the very definition of power. How did a queen from a land shrouded in incense and gold risk everything on a perilous journey simply to ask questions? What was the true price of the knowledge she sought, and what was the ultimate consequence of finding it? This is not merely a tale of royalty meeting royalty. It is the Genesis story of an intellectual and spiritual odyssey, deep within a realm where the air hummed with the scent of frankincense and the deserts guarded untold treasures. The magnificent land of Sheba reigned a sovereign whose name echoed not for military might, but for the fierce, insatiable hunger of her mind. From a young age, the Queen of Sheba understood that the ultimate currency was not the gold in her vast coffers, but the wisdom to wield it. She was a master of diplomacy, trade, and philosophy, driven by a solitary quest to unravel the great mysteries of existence. She saw her life not as a throne to be occupied, but as a journey toward enlightenment. For this queen, true dominion lay not in ruling kingdoms, but in conquering the bounds of human understanding. Her search was a sacred endeavor, and it was a hunger for truth that set her sights on the distant kingdom of Israel, and the king said to be blessed by a unique singular God. The decision to travel was not a whim. It was a calculated intellectual mandate. When the rumors of King Solomon's divine wisdom reached Sheba, they didn't just intrigue the queen, they challenged her. She saw Jerusalem not as a foreign capital, but as the site of a profound philosophical inquiry. The journey itself became an integral part of the test. Her caravan, spanning deserts and mountains, was an epic sight loaded with the most exquisite treasures of the ancient world. 120 talents of gold, an unprecedented cargo of rare spices, cinnamon, cassia, myrrh, and frankincense, and an array of precious stones. Yet the true cargo was her relentless curiosity and the armory of intellectual challenges she had prepared. These were not simple trivia questions. They were the most vexing paradoxes and riddles devised by her own court's scholars, crafted specifically to probe the depth and source of Solomon's boasted knowledge. Was his wisdom merely cleverness, or was it truly divine? She would not accept second-hand accounts. She required irrefutable proof. Her objective was binary: either debunk the myth and confirm her own kingdom's intellectual supremacy, or submit to a greater truth and learn its nature. The journey was a physical and mental pilgrimage, where every mile brought her closer to a confrontation that would not be settled by armies, but by the clarity of a king's mind. The entry of the Queen of Sheba into the Golden Gates of Jerusalem was a theatrical event, a moment where the grandeur of the East collided with the ascending magnificence of Israel. She was received with the highest possible honors, yet the queen was not there to admire pageantry. She was there to dissect a civilization. Her arrival marked the commencement of the profound phase of her inquiry, comprehensive, almost forensic observation. Her examination extended far beyond Solomon himself. It encompassed the intricate living ecosystem of his entire kingdom, operating under the principles of the wisdom he claimed. The physical splendor of Jerusalem, the vastness of Solomon's palace, and the sheer scale of the temple, still gleaming in its new construction, devoted to a singular God, Yahweh, were merely the backdrop. Her focus was on the functionality and justice of the state. She meticulously observed the administration, noting the precise and ordered movements of the royal staff. She saw the efficiency in the service, the hierarchy in the attendance, and the seamless logistics involved in maintaining such a massive royal household. The order of his tables, the seating of his officials, and the rotation of the dedicated ministers. Every detail spoke not of arbitrary wealth, but of deliberate, profound organization. A king might build a rich palace, but only a wise one could orchestrate a system that ran with the precision of a finely tuned clock, reflecting a deep understanding of human nature and governance. She spent hours in the courts, scrutinizing Solomon's judgments. She sought out cases that tested the very limits of ethics and law, listening intently for any trace of bias, self-interest, or failure of logic. She was hunting for the inconsistencies that betray a flawed ruler, but she found none. His decisions were characterized by an unwavering clarity and an impartial, almost transcendental sense of justice that settled disputes with finality and earned the quiet, deep respect of the populace. This was practical wisdom in action, wisdom that transformed abstract principles into tangible societal order. Furthermore, the queen was deeply intrigued by the spiritual foundation of Solomon's power. Having come from a land of polytheism, she observed the fervent monotheistic worship of Yahweh at the temple. She watched the elaborate sacrifices, the reverent attitudes of the priests, and the dedication of the people. She understood that Solomon himself attributed his wisdom to a gift from this single God. The queen's intellectual honesty demanded that she investigate this connection. Was it possible that this singular religious focus was the source of the unprecedented peace and prosperity she witnessed? Her observation was a relentless process, gathering data points on every aspect of the kingdom, from the flow of commerce and the security of trade routes to the discipline of the guards and the happiness of the citizens. The sheer quality and complexity of the operation affirmed that this was no accident. Solomon's realm was the materialized expression of an intelligence so vast that it transcended mere worldly cleverness. The weight of this realization began to press upon the queen. She had arrived expecting to find flaws to exploit or exaggerations to debunk, but every careful observation confirmed the opposite the rumor had. If anything, undersold the reality. The stage was set not for a simple diplomatic exchange, but for the ultimate test of two worldviews. The culmination of the queen's journey and observation was the direct intellectual engagement with King Solomon. This phase was the reason for her pilgrimage, and it transformed a political visit into a decisive battle of wits. The queen, having meticulously assessed the tangible wisdom evident in his governance, now moved to test the abstract wisdom that lay beneath. The riddles she presented were not simple puzzles designed for quick solutions. They were complex philosophical conundrums steeped in ethical ambiguity, metaphysical speculation, and human paradox questions that had vexed the most seasoned scholars of Sheba for generations. One might have concerned the nature of a just war, another the true definition of happiness versus contentment, or perhaps the subtle difference between divinely inspired genius and mortal cleverness. She might have posed questions designed to confuse identity, such as, what is it that is shared by the rich and the poor, and yet owned only by the one who gives it away? A riddle pointing towards sleep or breath, but demanding an answer that showed profound, multi-layered insight into human existence. She carefully watched Solomon's face, searching for hesitation, for a flicker of confusion, or the telltale sign of a guess masquerading as certainty. She was the ultimate skeptic, requiring more than smooth rhetoric. She demanded clarity that cut through the ambiguity of the human condition. Solomon, in contrast, met her challenges not with defensive pride, but with the quiet authority of one who spoke from a wellspring of infinite knowledge. The scriptures attest that he answered all her questions. Nothing was hidden from the king that he could not explain to her. His responses were not merely correct, they were illuminating. Where her riddles had presented a fork in the road, a choice between two seemingly logical but mutually exclusive answers, Solomon offered a third path, a synthesis that revealed the deeper truth underlying the paradox. He demonstrated wisdom that transcended mere human learning. It possessed a divine resonance. He spoke of the principles of the natural world, the deep-seated motivations of the human heart, and the laws of the universe, with an effortless precision that astonished the queen. His knowledge extended beyond philosophy into areas of natural science, botany, and zoology, demonstrating a comprehensive grasp of creation itself, a gift explicitly attributed to Yahweh. The confrontation quickly evolved from a test of wit into a spiritual encounter. The queen realized that the flawless nature of his answers was not a testament to his intellect alone, but to the unmediated access to divine understanding that he enjoyed. His wisdom was not earned, it was given. This was the moment of revelation. She was not just speaking to a king, she was receiving instruction from a conduit of the divine. Her entire worldview, which had valued accumulated knowledge above all else, was being dramatically restructured. The physical wealth of Sheba suddenly paled in comparison to the intellectual and spiritual riches of Solomon's connection to his God. The confrontation concluded not with a winner and a loser, but with a transformation, proving the ancient adage that true wisdom has the power not to destroy, but to radically rebuild the mind of the seeker. The queen found herself facing a truth so immense, so foundational, that it rendered all her prior knowledge incomplete. The moment the final riddle was solved, and the profound clarity of Solomon's wisdom illuminated the vast, shadowed corners of her own understanding, the Queen of Sheba experienced a singular, overwhelming physical and spiritual collapse. The scripture describes this reaction dramatically, and when she had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, there was no more spirit in her. This was not the exhaustion of defeat. It was the utter draining of arrogance and doubt. The spirit of skepticism was crushed under the weight of an indisputable truth. She was a woman who had seen everything, possessed everything, and believed she knew everything. Yet here in Jerusalem, she was confronted with a reality that made her own magnificent kingdom feel small and her own immense learning feel incomplete. The sight of Solomon's court, his impeccable governance, the seamless functioning of his massive palace operations, the discipline of his servants, and the fervor of the burnt offerings at the magnificent temple all became part of a single coherent testimony to a power she had never conceived. She did not merely witness wealth. She witnessed a divinely inspired blueprint for a perfect society. The wisdom was not confined to Solomon's mind. It was the air she breathed in his kingdom. The cumulative effect was the dismantling of her worldview. Humbled and reborn by this intellectual and spiritual encounter, the queen stepped forward, not as a sovereign of a rival power, but as a devoted seeker who had finally found her goal. Her declaration stands as one of the most powerful endorsements of wisdom in history, a moment when geopolitical rivalry yielded to spiritual admiration. She spoke with a voice stripped of all royal pretense, declaring to Solomon, "The report was true, that I heard in my own land about your wisdom and your prosperity, but I did not believe the reports until I came and my own eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpassed the fame that I heard." This acknowledgement that the truth was greater than the rumor affirmed Solomon's unique status to the world. Crucially, the queen's insight immediately transcended the man and went directly to the source. She did not merely praise Solomon. She praised the God who gave him the gift. Her words shifted from flattery to theological declaration. "Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord has loved Israel forever, he has made you king to execute justice and righteousness." This statement, coming from a polytheistic queen of an immensely powerful, independent nation, was nothing short of a conversion, or at the very least, a profound public recognition of Yahweh as the legitimate source of ultimate wisdom and power. This transformation was the most significant outcome of the meeting. The Queen of Sheba did not leave Jerusalem with merely a trade agreement. She carried an entirely new spiritual compass. Her skepticism was replaced by reverence, her curiosity by certainty. She had sought wisdom, and in the process found a God whose power was demonstrated not through brute force, but through the intellectual and moral superiority of his anointed king. Her journey was complete, having secured not just an alliance, but the most precious commodity of all, an undeniable transformative truth. The profound spiritual exchange now culminated in a spectacular material exchange, symbolizing the high respect and mutual admiration between the two sovereigns. Having witnessed the wisdom that surpassed all gold, the Queen of Sheba presented her lavish physical tribute. She gave Solomon 120 talents of gold, a staggering amount that would forever define the opulence of the era, along with an immense quantity of rare spices and precious stones. The scriptures note that no more such abundance of spices came as these which the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Her gifts were a silent, tangible admission that the rumored wealth of Israel was secondary to its intellectual riches, yet she offered her best as a token of genuine respect for the wisdom she had uncovered. Solomon, the recipient of wisdom's reward, reciprocated this generosity with equal if not greater measure. He gave the queen all that she desired, whatever she asked, besides what Solomon had given her according to the bounty of King Solomon. This phrase is rich with meaning. Not only did he meet her specific requests, which likely included exotic goods, strategic knowledge, or trade concessions, but he also bestowed gifts derived purely from his royal generosity and the prosperity his wisdom had created. The exchange was a final, elegant act of diplomacy, sealing a bond founded on intellectual merit rather than territorial necessity. Finally, the time came for her departure. The Queen of Sheba left Jerusalem not as a foreign potentate securing a trade deal, but as a pilgrim concluding a sacred quest. Her return journey across the vast deserts was not a retreat, but a thoughtful procession. She carried with her not only Solomon's royal bounty, but the imprint of a new theology and the irrefutable evidence of divine wisdom. The sovereign who had left Sheba, seeking a philosophical challenge, returned carrying a spiritual reformation. She had arrived a skeptic. She departed a believer in the power of a wisdom that had the capacity to reorganize the entire world. The story of the Queen of Sheba's journey did not end with her return to her fragrant realm. It became an immortal narrative, a template for the intellectual and spiritual pursuit that continues to resonate across civilizations. Her legacy is one of the most powerful endorsements of wisdom over wealth, and her tale is woven into the sacred histories of major world faiths. In Jewish tradition, she remains the quintessential proof of Solomon's unparalleled divine gift, symbolizing the universal curiosity that must eventually yield to the truth of Yahweh. For the Christian tradition, her willingness to travel great distances to hear Solomon's wisdom was cited by Christ himself as a reproach to those in his own time who rejected a far greater wisdom available right before them. Most profoundly, the story forms the bedrock of Ethiopian national identity. In their tradition, she is Makeda, and her union with Solomon resulted in a son Menelik I, who founded the Solomonic dynasty that ruled Ethiopia for millennia. Crucially, the Ethiopian legend holds that Menelik eventually brought the Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred relic of Israel, from Jerusalem to Aksum, establishing Ethiopia as a divine repository of the original covenant. Whether literal history or hallowed myth, this tradition elevates the Queen's visit from a diplomatic curiosity into a pivotal event in world spiritual history. Ultimately, the Queen of Sheba stands as an enduring symbol. She represents the courage of the honest skeptic, the seeker who values truth above political pride. She models the humility required to recognize wisdom when found, even if it comes from an unfamiliar culture and serves an unfamiliar God. Her journey teaches us that the most significant conquests are not those of land and armies, but those that overcome the limits of one's own mind. Her legacy confirms that the true measure of a leader, and indeed of any human spirit, is defined by the quality of the questions they dare to ask and the depth of the answers they are willing to accept.